Alright, so it's alright, so hello everyone. I see that a couple of people have started tuning into the stream. Welcome. So right now I'm doing the second Speednarios stream. I know there has been quite a long break, but we're back at it. And in a moment after more people start tuning in, I'll start doing the first scenario. Oh, I think that's a good enough volume. Alright, so I see someone has tuned into this. So I see someone has tuned into this stream. Welcome. What scenario should I do? So I guess I'll start this first scenario and wait till more people join the stream while I'm doing it. So, how about a simple what if Latin America united scenario to start things off? So first off, we'll have to start off with Grand Colombia. So first off, we'll have to start with Grand Colombia, which in this timeline would be able to unify with both Peru and Bolivia after the conquest of Simon Bolivar. And they will be later on he'll have further successes in the south and convince the sovereign states to also unify. But by this point, Uruguay would probably be under Brazil for the time being. Later on, going to Central America, it will still the Central American Union will still probably collapse. This sort of turning into what if everything went perfect for the Union scenario, but let's say Simon Bolivar convinces the officials there, the officials there that are pro-union, convinces them to join the state in exchange for the union becoming a part. In exchange for the union becoming a part of the nation. Further on, it will be quite difficult to make Mexico join the union. But that'll come later. First off, let's concentrate on the internal politics of the union. It would obviously have a lot of issues, since in our timeline, not even Colombia, Venezuela, and Ecuador could stick together after the position of Simón Bolívar. But let's say Simón Bolívar is more competent, so he's able to still keep control of the state. He will likely concentrate on creating a common identity throughout Latin America, and for the sake of the scenario, despite it's quite unrealistic, I'll say he succeeds. Early on, maybe even going to war with Brazil over Uruguay to create a national, to have something to unify the nation with. Ultimately coming out on top, but it's still possible Britain would intervene, resulting in the Uruguay being for now an independent state. Here comes where the annexation of Mexico is actually possible to some degree. Going to the Mexican-American War, Mexico would be facing several uncertainties, such as various revolts from Texas, California, and other regions. This would be taken as an opportunity by Latin America, which first off they first off would take control of the rebelling Yucatan, and later when Mexico regains control over the other regions, and when Mexico regains control over the other regions, and eventually get into a war with the United States, they might use that uncertainty and several other civil wars to finally annex the nation after years of conflict. Going further into the future, is Latin America would probably annex Uruguay and expand deeper into Patagonia, likely coming into conflict with Britain over regions in Guyana as well as the Falkland Islands. This would be a large-scale conflict, although I still think, and in this case, I don't think Central America Latin America could. Let's start over. Latin America would have several disputes with the British. First off, several of their possessions in the Caribbean, along with Belize, their support for the Mosquito Kingdom, claimed regions in Guyana, along with the Falklands. So these disputes would likely eventually come to a head, but first it's likely that they would finish off the remaining Spanish colonies in the Caribbean. So this will be about the 1870s, after the Civil War. As goes for the Civil War itself, while Latin America might be slightly inclined to intervene, ultimately I doubt they would want. I doubt Latin America would intervene. They would likely just capitalize on American on America on American on America's Civil War and take control of most of the Caribbean states and win a war against Spain. Now let's go for a climax for the video. A war between between Latin America and Britain. They would likely go to war sometime around the 70s, when the US is still not too trusting of Britain as a result of some of their actions during the Civil War. This would make the US slightly favored Latin America. The state would have the clear home advantage early on and quickly take regions like Guyana, the Mosquito Kingdom, Belize. Along with Jamaica and Bahamas for now. Similarly, would likely also same goes for the Falklands for now. Although eventually the British Navy will start being more prevalent in the region, which would result in Britain retaking many of their previous territories, such as the Falklands. Not for now, since since it wouldn't be a priority. But they would likely make several landings into Central America and the Caribbean, taking many small islands there and preventing invasions of both Cuba and Hispaniola. They would eventually start gaining more control over the islands, although there would be a fierce guerrilla war going on there. Britain would likely also plan several naval invasions, although only a few would likely be successful. Resulting in a war in the mainland as well. They would also take this time to retake the Falklands. The war by this point the war would start turning into a drawn out. By this point, the war would start turning into a drawn-out struggle, resulting in the U.S. intervening and mediating a peace treaty. Since now since no states really held that advantage, it's likely that that things would mostly return to the status quo, although Latin America would likely gain the Mosquito Kingdom. And maybe gain their claims in Guyana. Okay, so I think that's it for the first scenario. Not the best, but I think it was a decent warm up. Oh, welcome to the stream, Iqbal. Scenario idea. What if everything went perfect for the Ottoman Empire? Good idea. Since I don't really have maps for now beyond the 1700s, I'll start around 1730. Or maybe I'll add some context to the maps before that. So the Ottomans would probably would the Ottomans in this timeline would win the Greater Turkish War. Maybe maybe just the coalition isn't fast enough to coalesce, and the Poles aren't as inclined to intervene, which results in Vienna falling, and in turn the Austrian Empire eventually. Although there would be some holdouts to Ottoman rule. Notably, Bohemia is likely to remain sovereign, along with Tyrol holding out in the mountains. The Commonwealth would likely also uh, regain some of their territories, uh, and for the sake of the video, let's also say that the Commonwealth that the Turks are able to defend against the Polish incursions in Ukraine, notably thanks to some help from the Tatars. Going further into the future, we have the Great Northern War. Here the Turks have an opportunity to intervene and aid Sweden. So the Turks and Sweden form an alliance around the time when uh, is, although let's rephrase that, since this is a what if everything went perfect for the Ottoman Empire, the Ottomans would soon join the war, since when Sweden was going on of an offensive in South Ukraine, the Ottoman Sultan would be convinced to join the war and aid Sweden. Thanks to this, Sweden would not suffer their devastating loss at Poltava. This would also help. This would also, while not a devastating defeat for Russia outright, this victory would ultimately would eventually lead to the victory of the Ottomans in Sweden. With Sweden keeping control of the Commonwealth as a vassal, the Ottomans likely regaining gaining even more territories in Ukraine. And crippling a significant threat in the form of Russia for the near future. So after the great so after the Great Turkish War, the next event I could see happening in the timeline would be one would definitely be the War of although no, since Sweden keeps control of Poland. The next major event to occur would likely be the 7 Years' War, which would play out quite a bit different in this timeline. So in the West, it would be Britain against France. Meanwhile, in Europe, uh, the Ottomans would definitely be a fringe ally, which would ironically might actually result in the sides flipping upside down, as Russia would join Britain, but Prussia would still likely be on the side of Britain. They would mostly defend against French incursions from the west, since they wouldn't have to uh, risk invasion from the Ottomans. Bohemia might also join, but ultimately their participation wouldn't do much, and the front would be stuck somewhere in the mountains. The war between Russia and the Ottomans would likely return to the would likely be in the Ottoman favor by this point, is since the war here would wait. Um, the war would be a 50-50 for now, with some sides gaining the advantage and some losing it. Ultimately, with all the changes happening in the scenario, and with Sweden not having lost in the Great Northern War, Sweden might aid the Ottomans, which would result in another Russian defeat, but Prussia would still get out relatively unscathed, since it's doubtful that Sweden would launch any major invasions there. This would most likely keep most of the status quo, although there would be some minor territorial gains for the Ottomans, along with Sweden. And as goes for the West, France still loses the 7 Years' War, just like in our timeline, nothing changes there. And now let's maybe concentrate on, since external affairs are mostly dealt with. Although maybe another thing could be that during the Persian instability, the Ottomans go ahead and take more lands that were often in contention between them and Persia. So Western Persia and Azerbaijan. So as goes for internal politics, the Ottoman sultans would wait. The Ottoman sultans would ultimately uh, be able to reign through the reforms, despite the Janissaries, and ultimately the Janissaries would be disbanded and replaced with a more modern army. With that, several other reforms, such as ones helping to boost the Ottoman economy, would be instated. Ultimately leading to a more stable Ottoman state. Maybe I'll also try another time period with this scenario. So let's go with somewhere around the 1870s, 1880s. Is somewhere around the Russo-Turkish War, meaning the Turks have already lost, although maybe somewhere around the Crimean War. So in this timeline, the Turkish government is able to deal with the Janissaries, making them less of a threat, which also results in a more stable Ottoman Empire. For the sake of the scenario, and to make the Ottoman situation better, let's say they aren't as aggressive with various rebellions, which gives states such as Russia less justification to invade the state. Ultimately, the loss of Egypt is likely inevitable, but what we could change later on is maybe the First Balkan War. Well, there will definitely be some losses, uh, such as the Bruja, and ultimately the internal pressure, other territory, other and due to internal pressure along with nationalism, other territories would be lost as well. It would be in a much more comfortable position for the Ottomans. Going into World War One, the Ottomans won't intervene on either side of the conflict, instead taking the opportunity to sell the newly extracted resources such as oil to both states to make a profit, along with extracting some concessions from either party, such as maybe regaining such lands like Cyprus or Kuwait. And there's not much else I could see happening in this scenario. Maybe aside from the Ottomans getting promised and eventually returned to Egypt after British colonization. So that's it for that scenario. Alright, so now for the next scenario. Welcome to the stream, Levis Atome. And what if the ox-like failed to form, causing the Hungarians to revolt in 1868? I'll quickly search it up just to make sure. Oh, the Austro-Hungarian Compromise. So by this point, it would likely be too early for, since Germany wouldn't be formed, Austria wouldn't be in any alliance with them. Same goes for, and they would likely be more concentrated on what's happening with France and trying to get into war with them. Russia would likely not help Austria due to the recent disputes coming about as a result of their betrayal in the Crimean War. This would likely result in Hungary breaking away, which could say change many things in the grand scheme of things. First off, I don't see it out of the realm of possibilities for Italy to once again take advantage of it and swoop in to take some of their desired territories. Next up, the second thing worth to address for now, Croatia would likely remain under Austrian control, although some regions like Slavonia would likely still be invaded and conquered by Hungary, which would likely result in the two states being the state being divided now officially into the Austrian half and the Hungarian half, which actually might not be as bad as imagined, since it could actually result in some reforms in the Austrian Empire, resulting in more autonomy for all the nationalities. It also could have some effect on the colonial race. Sorry. I mean, excuse me. This could ultimately result in Austria gaining some regions, like maybe the Sahara instead of Spain, or maybe some minor territories in Somalia, since there would be no Hungary to oppose them. Ultimately, something interesting would be what would happen with the League of the Free Emperors. While it is possible that the alliance still forms to some degree, what will Hungary have to play in such an alliance? Since ultimately it I was going to say that it'd be more beneficial for Russia to have Hungary as an ally, but maybe actually Austria, since Hungary actually has more interest in the Slavic lands, which would likely and the South Slavic lands, which might actually result in such an alliance working. Ultimately, another long-term benefit for Austria in this scenario is that with Austria not really having much access to it, they won't gain Bosnia, which won't cause any much tension between them and Serbia, and ultimately when the first Balkan War comes around, it will likely result in Bulgaria being more satisfied with their gains, with their territorial gains. Ultimately, a weaker Austria might also result in no Albania in the Balkans. Going to any possible World War One, if it were to happen, it's still likely that Russia and Germany would eventually come to heads, especially with the rise of Prince Wilhelm in Germany, of Wilhelm II to Germany, which might and the general tensions in Europe might result in a world war. So it would be Germany and Austria. Actually, I have to think about this. Also, actually, I could see a radically different world war happening than our timeline. So, since the scenarios focus on Austria and Hungary, let's say it starts off between them. First off, their alliance, the League of the Free, still existing League of Free Emperors would join in. Is followed suit by the various Balkan powers bordering Hungary. Uh, actually, they would join a bit later for the sake of the scenario. Italy would likely soon join in, which without the central powers would likely be. Sorry for changing so many stuff, but actually I have to think this through. Uh, France would join the war for now to support Hungary, so that the League of the Free Emperors doesn't gain too much power in Central Europe. The Ottomans will likely also join by the year of the end of the year, and so would Britain, since France would still have their defenses on the Maginot Line, which results in Germany passing through Belgium to get through to France. Actually, now that I and come to think of it, if such a were to occur, it would be it would be a complete victory for the Central Powers, since Germany would likely be able to take Paris in the first weeks of the war. Hungary would pose no issue, especially especially after the other Balkan powers start joining in. Same goes for the Ottomans, which would likely be uh, is dismantled, maybe even in compromise with the Entente. So maybe let's go to a peace treaty. So before the end of the war, various Balkan powers would start joining in and start collecting their share of the spoils, with states such as Romania gaining much of Transylvania, Serbia gaining regions such as Vojvodina, along with Slavonia, and Austria. Ultimately, I don't think they would re-annex the state, but by this point, although this is in the realm of possibilities, the state would likely, although although the state would likely retake control over all of Slovakia and Carpathia, Ruthenia, in order to have a better border connection with Galicia, along uh, along with that to create a new Slavic state in the a possible new Slavic state in the empire. And eventually Montenegro would join Serbia, forming something is similar to Yugoslavian state, but also different at the same time. Italy ultimately won't even have a chance to join, since they would be torn between the Entente and the League, and and especially since they would have a lot of their desires satisfied because of their uh, in conquest of them during Austrian instability. Meanwhile, Germany would likely take several territories they generate during such scenarios. Luxembourg and expand further into Lorraine and make Belgium a puppet state, also expanding it further. Along with several colonies in Africa. And the Ottomans would also lose a lot of territory. Okay, so that's it for this scenario, I think, at least. I'll just check something quickly. Alright. Okay, so I'm back. Also, for those who haven't yet, make sure to join the Discord server. Since I do plan hosting some sort of event in the near future. So I'll think of some sort of scenario to do. Oh. Okay, so some people seem to have joined the stream. Welcome. So, a new scenario. Mm, maybe one I've done a bit before. So maybe a joke scenario. Actually, no, maybe that's not the best idea. So... not... Maybe I'll try to expand on one of the scenarios in my recent what. Alright, here. So here we are, and Let's check what endings could I do, which are after the 1700s. So we have the Lion of the North ending, Brandenburg Tragedy ending, Northern Accord ending, Peaceful ending, Stagnation ending, Pyrrhic ending, Kosciuszko Napoleonic ending. That one could be an interesting one, but I don't know what to expand on that one. So the peaceful ending, just as it says, it doesn't have much to offer. Maybe I'll expand on all of the endings and words for now. So starting off with the hereditary ending. So here basically instead, so just like in the explained in the video, there's not much to add here. So basically during this, there's not much to add here. So basically during the so basically before the death of Sigismund II Augustus and during the reign of the previous rulers such as Sigismund I the Old, the Commonwealth is able to reform. Poland is able to at least remain somewhat more with more control of the monarchs, eventually resulting in Poland's remaining hereditary monarchy. Next up, we have the democratic ending. This one is pretty standard. So wait a second. All right. So during so the Commonwealth was able to slowly reform from being under the control of the nobles and the king to a more constitutional monarchy and almost a full-on democracy. Since the Commonwealth did have a large percentage of its population voting in elections, which was actually ahead of its time. So coming under the control of the magnates, it becomes a the state is able to removing the liberal veto and instead making more. It instead reforms depending on majority votes. So next up we have the Valois ending. In this one Henry III Valois doesn't flip Poland, and for the sake of this scenario, France, when the previous king dies, Henry III still inherits the throne. Eventually, through some miraculous circumstances, Henry the kings of France remain as the king of the Commonwealth, eventually reforming it to a more so is just like the Vasa kings of our timeline, with the all three kings coming from Sweden. This French advantage would allow them to uh, have a greater victory in the 30 Years' War, especially since Sweden won't have to concentrate on the Commonwealth for the early years of the war, and eventually when it comes to it, during the War of Spanish Succession with their greater advantage, they would be able to win, especially since states like Austria in this scenario would be in a worse position since without the Commonwealth to aid them, they wouldn't outright collapse, but they would lose a large portion of their territories, most notably Hungary, to the Ottomans, and they would already have lost uh, the Austrian or Spanish Netherlands to France. Next up is the Batory timeline, and I think this one is well explained well enough in the video, although I did make a slight error in the video since I accidentally put Genoa in control of these. Next up we have the Habsburg ending, and this one also is mostly as it says. So basically there was mostly during both the reign of King Stefan Batory as well as the rule of Sigismund I Vasa, there were several rebellions for the Austrian candidates to actually win. In this scenario, Sigismund I trades it. In such a scenario, they could actually either win the election or trade the throne of the Commonwealth in exchange for backing Sigismund and retaking the throne of Sweden, since that was actually a proposal in our timeline. And similar as the Valois scenario, this would give more advantage to the Habsburgs, eventually letting them win over the Ottomans as well as dominate the Holy Roman Empire. Next up, we have the Polish-Swedish ending, and this one is just taken from. And this one's just taken from what if Poland and Sweden remained in personal unions. So I don't think there's much to add here. Next up, it's a Polish-Russian ending. So in our timeline, Poland occupied Moscow for a few years, and during that time, the heir, not necessarily the heir, but the son of the king, Sigismund I, who wait, sorry, I'm lost in that sentence. So the son of the king. Wait, I'm sorry. So Sigismund I's son, Vladislav IV, took the throne of Moscow for a few. Took the throne of Russia for a few years. In this scenario, they would join the Hochim-Tzotzora War, where first the Commonwealth lost in the Battle of Tzotzora, losing a valuable commander, and later getting a revenge for it in the Battle of Hochim, which ultimately was mostly a stalemate. But in this timeline, later on, with Russian help, the Commonwealth would be able to win such a conflict, drastically reducing the Crimean Khaganate and also taking control of Moldavia, ending the Moldavian Magnate Wars. Also, with the extra resources and not having to concentrate on another front in Russia, they would also be able to, to concentrate on Sweden and take the rest of Estonia. So they were for a long most of the time period, Poland had an advantage in these wars. That is before the rule of Gustav Adolphus, but so they would be able to take it over for now. Later on, after the death, after the death of Sigismund III, Vladislav IV would inherit the throne of Poland and and eventually unify the states. Next up is a mixture of the previous two scenarios, so I don't think there's much to get into that. This one is basically the same, but with a Polish reconquest of Sweden. And this timeline, Poland just doesn't grant the Polish king doesn't allow Prussia to take over. I mean Brandenburg to take over Prussia, ultimately not becoming ultimately not becoming the kingdom of Prussia. While this might be mostly inconsequential in the short term, it might result in actually more stability for the Commonwealth, especially since Brandenburg might not intervene in the deluge. Next up is the No Russia ending, in which Russia, because of a tougher, because of a more difficult time of troubles for Russia, along with their enemies more concentrated on defeating them, would ultimately result in Russia to fall and eventually be carved up by their neighbors. So next up, it is a scenario during the Smolensk War. This is just like the Polish-Russian ending, but the union happened immediately due to it already being the reign of Vladislav IV. Next up is the Russian deluge timeline. I don't really think. Are there any endings actually I should get into that one? Because right now I'm just repeating the video. So, sorry about that. So the last ones probably no, since they aren't too. They don't need explanation too in depth. And for the last two, aka the Brandenburg tragedy ending, these two, the Brandenburg tragedy ending and the Northern Accord ending. You can check out my video. What if Poland wasn't partitioned? So it's a mixture of these two timelines. Next up, we have the line of the North ending, which is a scenario where Sweden actually does win the Great Northern War, and as a result, King Stanislav Leszczyński remains on the throne of Poland, but ultimately, uh, but ultimately, it is it mostly retains Poland still retains most of its autonomy, resulting in. Actually, this is already a scenario. I don't need to repeat this. This isn't a scenario that needs too much depth. maybe the central line ending could actually be interesting to go in depth. So in this one, the Polish army is more competent, yes, just like stated in the scenario. But it also takes into account the fact that the nobles of Livonia actually did offer King Augustus strong the position of Duke of Livonia, as well as the fact that, so as far as I'm aware, he was planning to integrate it into Poland in order to have, in order to gain more control over the state. The Sobieski ending covers the is is what if the Sobieski dynasty remained on the throne, so I don't think there's much to cover with that. But basically, after the death of King Jan III Sobieski, Poland basically was always a shell of its former self. Since after his death, the King of Saxony, partially due to intervention from the foreign powers, uh, came to rule Poland, which eventually resulted in the spiral that uh, eventually spiraled into the partition. Now, Austria ending is quite explanatory. Okay, so I guess I could partially explain the rebound ending. So it goes basically like, sorry. So it basically goes something like this. After the deluge actually no, during the deluge, Russia was still on the offensive against Poland, and the king concentrated on the king instead focused on reforming the state before tackling with Russia. For such a scenario to happen, the king could either deal with Russia first, possibly resulting in such a treaty, and then with the nobles, uh, which would result in the king winning, possibly against the opposition led by Lubomirski, and reforming the state, or just winning somehow. Although it would likely need to be less bloody, since it's currently quite joined, at least for the time period, it is known as quite infamous. Alright, so I think it's about time to end the stream. Since not many people seems to be here. So thank you everyone for watching, everyone who attended the stream, and so thank you for watching, and goodbye till the next stream.